Coach Michael Adams, welcome back, my friend.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Thank you. And what a wonderful discussion and conversation we had last week. And certainly glad to have you back on this week's episode of Leadership Synergize, where we present individuals who have had a lifetime, whatever length that lifetime has been, in the moment of experiences, in particular around leadership and development in the personal, professional areas. Coach, last week we wrapped up the discussion and conversation around some of the experiences and, quite frankly, the value of values in becoming yourself while learning from others throughout a number of experiences. Just like to ask you, after 30 plus years in education, coaching, are the challenges different today when it comes to staying true to self, being self-aware, and living those values than perhaps they were when you started in this career?
I think there's a lot of things you could point to. I always start out by telling I've done this for over 30 years, and we had stinker kids at the beginning, and we have stinker kids now. But at the beginning, we had great kids, and we have great kids now. They're still great kids. I think the problem is the social media. There's just so much more exposure to things that maybe could lead kids down the wrong path. And you talk about just that level of commitment towards the team, and we look at what's happening in our world. Look what happens in the NBA. Guys get traded all the time to teams. They beat the deadline, and then you look at what's happening with college basketball. I don't know how they do it. I really don't. Donna's cousin is Michael Lewis, who's the head coach at Ball State, and we've been able to talk. And I've talked to a lot of college coaches. Their frustration. These kids go into the transfer portal, and they just seem they can jump fence and it's going to be greener on the other side and run away from their situation to better situation and more money. And that all filters down. And I think at our level, at the high school level, we see that. I mentioned Michael Lewis. She's also cousins to Brian Lewis, who works at the IHSA with Paul Neidig. And I know Brian gets frustrated with all the kids wanting to transfer. And it's hard because I'm old school. I came from that place of you got these kids come in your camp as little bitty kids. You watch them and nourish them and watch them develop. And then someday they come together and they get to play for you at the varsity level. And that means something. And I think we've lost that. And I don't really blame the kids. I just blame the world we're living in. I think a lot of it is just unfortunate. So I think then what do you have to do? Well, I don't believe in recruiting, but I believe in recruiting your own kids. The kids that are in your program, you got to really make them want to love you and want to stay there and understand the vision that you have as a group and have that happen. And that's tough. It's been well documented. I had the Lander kid, Christian Lander, who was a 5-star recruit and was a talented young man. I'm so lucky I got to coach him. With that being said, Christian chose his senior year to leave early and reclassify and go play for Coach Miller at IU. And we all now can look back and say that probably wasn't the smartest thing for Christian to do. But that's hard. That's hard. People would want to beat up Christian to me and talk about it. He's a great kid. But he was more a victim of what he was being told in the times. I don't think he's a bad person. It's just hard. And I don't know what all the answers are. I think the kids that you have, our number one rule was you got to be a great teammate. You got to be a great teammate and you got to care. And I've been in those locker rooms where that's true and guys care about one another and they love one another. And it's amazing how much better that year goes and the success when you have that and it's real, as opposed to the years maybe you don't have that for whatever reason. Yeah, I don't know. I'm talking around and around. I don't know if that answers any of your question, but I just think it's tough.
It absolutely did, Coach. And it really builds a follow-up that I have is your perspective. Certainly COVID in 2020, 2021 changed the environment. Some would argue maybe the environment was moving that direction that we're seeing post-COVID. COVID sped up the process. Some would put all the blame on COVID itself. Certainly, we're seeing more and more educators, more and more coaches not having the longevity someone like yourself had in the profession, and the challenges, the social and emotional challenges that I would say not only the children are facing today, but those adults in those roles. You mentioned last week your children serving in the medical industry and the challenges and that industry faces in that area, but education faces today, educators face today. Talk, if you would, a bit about some of your observations and thoughts about how do we move forward and serve our society today, tomorrow's or today's future for tomorrow, to give them the best opportunity to overcome some of the things right now that are getting in the way.
Yeah, I had to laugh. You mentioned the COVID year. I always prayed, oh, I just want to win my last game just one time. And we obviously got really close. We got beaten overtime in two teams, but that was my goal. And of course, the COVID year, we had a really good team and we were getting ready to go to Seymour. We had a big pep session. We're going to go to Seymour and have our practice and do what we do for the regionals. And my son was just floored because he was talking to me all week saying, I can't believe they haven't pulled the plug with what's going on. You're not going to go. You're not going to play. Of course, they changed it all. We could only let so many in. We had to choose what fans got to go and what. It was crazy. The craziest thing any of us ever been through. And we're on the bus and they pulled us off the bus and they pulled the plug on it. And I remember thinking, I said, daggone it, I wanted to win my last one, and here it is. This isn't what I meant. But yeah, that was tough. But I think to answer your question, it seems like we point to COVID for all of our ills. I think to answer it, my opinion is we got to quit blaming COVID. We got to move on. I think Lou Holtz said it. That's why the good Lord put eyes in front of our head. We want to see where we're going, not where we've been. I think we learned from the COVID thing, but I think we got to move forward. We got to move on. And I think things are getting better. I really do. And I think we just got to be positive. It was something we all experienced. It was crazy. It's a history thing, but we got to learn from it. And I think we got to be proactive and we need to move on at this point and not keep blaming everything on COVID. And man, I got stories. It was a crazy time. I felt like an AAU basketball coach. Couldn't go on the same bus. We had to meet our kids where we were playing on the road. Our athletic director didn't even want our coaches riding together because she said, I don't want you guys all getting sick and me having to coach the team. So we couldn't even ride up as coaches. It was just a crazy thing to be in a car by yourself going to Terre Haute with basketballs in the trunk and uniforms and taking off to Terre Haute for a game, just praying all your kids got there and your coaches got there. It was certainly a crazy time. But yeah, I just think we have to move on. And I will say, Kevin, one thing I think we've learned from the COVID is we got to take mental health more serious. I think mental health is a disease, a problem that people have that we just want to sweep under the carpet. We can't physically see it. When you have a knee injury or ankle injury, we can see that hurt and that pain. You can't see mental illness. And I think that if one thing that came out of COVID is for us maybe to be more sensitive to people and rightfully so that are struggling with mental issues. I think it was a crazy thing, but we're out of it now. I think we got to move on. We got to be positive and move forward.
Coach, you hit upon an area that, in my experience, is working with individuals and organizations from a leadership piece. Everything comes back again, and you've heard me use this term many times. Our listeners and audience who follow the show on a regular basis have as well. But the value of self-awareness, and part of the still aspect in the logo on the screen that everybody sees each week in our programming is really about the S, serving, but going beyond serving others. As I look back, there's a legacy in education where educators sacrifice almost everything for self to serve others, but there's so much value in serving self, and not in a selfish way. But unless we're serving ourselves, and that's got to start, in my experience in research and research of others that go well beyond my expertise, with loving ourselves. And more today, the promotion of positive self-talk. I can recall being a child in the 1960s, and man, if people thought you were talking to yourself, they were told to stay away from you in that piece. But there's so much value we've learned from the brain. And what I love now about that, Coach, that you alluded to a moment ago, the world, the experts that are doing that work, the scientists, the medical experts, are breaking it down so much to allow people like myself to be able to relate to it and see more how I can utilize that. But the value of self-talk and loving self is so important, especially in the field of education today.
Yeah, I use that quote a lot. Socrates said, love thyself. And I think it's so important. You got self-esteem. And I think that's really what coaching is getting guys to believe in themselves and believe they can accomplish great things and just have that attitude. We're going to do well. I think the world would be pretty depressing if we looked at it the other way. I think that's the way we got to look at it. We got to believe that good things are going to happen. Every day we wake up, God gave us a gift. What are we going to do with it? My sweet mother, I told you I learned a lot of lessons from my parents. She would one morning on the old farm, I was a teenager having a bad day. We had to get up and feed cattle before school, and I don't even know what happened, but something ticked me off. And I remember my mother telling me, and she said it in a nice way, you need to look in the mirror and do an attitude check. You need to do that. And parents tell you things. As I was leaving the house, and this is what she said, I'll never forget. She always would kiss me and tell me she loved me. And then she said, have a great day if you want to. Have a great day if you want to. And I've used that and I've never forgotten that. And I think that's so true. A lot of times it is our approach and how we're going to look at things. And I just think we got to try to be not to over, but you got to be positive. You just do. You got to wake up, believe great things are going to happen. And I have found our job as coaches is to get guys to set high goals and believe in themselves and believe in each other. And man, when that comes together, it's a beautiful thing when you see kids with that confidence and kids supporting one another. That's a neat thing to see. And doesn't always come together. It's not always easy, but when it does, it's pretty cool. But I think you're right. It starts with self-love, having a high self-esteem, and just a belief that good things are going to happen.
Coach, you obviously spent a career, highly successful career, creating positive impacts for many adults and children, young adults. And I reflect back and I'll just utilize recently we lost Bill Walton, a positive representative for the game of basketball overall. And I go back to my youth, my early teen years, and Bill Walton and John Wooden and UCLA, those teams dominating. But even before, you mentioned it was Lou Alcindor. I still have a Milwaukee Buck with his autograph, Lou Alcindor. Back in the day, you wrote for autographs, right? You didn't have to pay for them, so to speak, as you do today. I've always been drawn to the impact coaches throughout time. And I'll just use John Wooden and his pyramid of success. That in reading, he began developing as far back as the 1940s and through the 1950s and 60s and throughout his entire life. The alignment that coaches have and the skills they've developed, the philosophies and values they promoted and lived and modeled, and how they're applicable just in everyday life. But yet, I'm not sure society, even today, recognizes the simplicity. And I don't use that term disrespectfully. I use it in the highest regard with full respect. But the linkage it has even today in this 21st century, where every place you look, there's a lack of true leadership with principles and values at the heart occurring in our world. But yet the profession of coaching, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, track and field, any sport, where that still has remained constant and consistent with a purpose today.
Yeah, man, you talk about a good read. Go get any of his books. He was just an unbelievable human being. And it wasn't about the basketball, X's and O's. It was about his life lessons and the consistency. I know one thing I've always done, if you ever came to any of our practices at the beginning, you would see Coach Adams sweeping the floor. That's just something I enjoyed doing. I did it every day. And one time I had a young assistant said, "You're an idiot. Why are you doing that?" You got a manager that would do that. And I looked at him and I said, when those kids come out that tunnel after a long day, I want them to see me sweeping the floor. I don't want them to think that I think I'm too good or above this. Well, none of us are above this. And if they know I'm willing to sweep the floor, maybe they'll be willing to get the help side a little bit quicker. And I really believe that. I think, and that was, I think, a John Wooden thing, if I'm not mistaken. That was an example he used. And I just think, yeah, you gotta be humble and show kids you're not afraid to do those kinds of things. And it is about the simple, and it is simple, but it's what makes you successful. The life lessons. You're better to be one of the sayings my dad would always instill me is be on time. And I remember Coach Perry, we had a rebel time meant you had to be there 15 minutes before you had to be there, which we were confused as teenagers what that really meant, but it meant be on time. You're better. You be an hour early than a minute late. Tell people when you say something, say what you mean, what you say. I could go on and on about these little sayings, but they're sayings that matter and they're simple. But when you put them all together, you have a person you can count on, someone that's going to be there and someone's going to work hard and you can count on them. It's about accountability. A lot of this stuff to me is just accountability, responsibility and accountability. And are you committed? Can I trust you? Are you going to work hard? All that stuff comes together. And I think we could say it's simplistic, but it's not.
Coach, I wouldn't be doing our listeners justice if we didn't jump back. We're sitting down and having this conversation post Memorial Day, to holiday here in the United States where we reflect and give thought to everyone who served. But I wouldn't be doing justice if we didn't go back and talk a bit about your experiences and how those experiences molded the Michael Adams that we've spent the past 2 weeks with.
Yeah, I told you I was just so fortunate to grow up on that farm in southern Indiana and learn hard work at a young age. We were a Christian family. We went to church. I had loving sisters, and just really a perfect place to grow up. And then to go on to college and get to be around the people I was around was great. I think one of the things that really helped me in my success and helped me with confidence was when I went into the military. My military experience and that opportunity to serve our country. And I always loved our country, but I think after I got out of the military and spent 2 years, almost 2 years in Korea, I really gained an appreciation for what we have here as Americans and a sense of pride in being an American. And I know with my classes, one of the things we do at Wrights is every morning we have the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a moment of silence. Well, in Coach Adams's class, that's talked about. Why do we do the pledge? And I would encourage people to watch. There's a great thing with Red Skelton, who's actually an Indiana guy, that he does on the Pledge of Allegiance. You can just Google it. It's really cool on what he has to say about the Pledge of Allegiance. But yeah, I think I'm the person I am because of the people I've been able to grow up with, and very proud of that.
We're proud and appreciate your service. Coach, a word of advice from a lesson learned or through your multi-years, 30 plus years of experience as a coach, as an educator, as a leader for today's leaders, and that may be looking to further their own growth and development.
I think there's a lot of things. Number one, have faith in our Lord Jesus Christ. You can't, and a lot of times people say, how do you do what you do? How do you do that? Don't you ever get nervous or afraid? And I'm quick to remind them, well, it's not really me. I'm not by myself. And I think that's a good lesson. You don't have to do this by yourself. So I think your faith is really important. And I would tell anyone it starts with that. And then you just can't be afraid of hard work. Don't be afraid of hard work. And you got to roll up your sleeves and get after it. But you also have to realize that just because you work hard doesn't mean you're going to be successful. Sometimes life can be tough. And so then the lesson is you got to keep coming back. You got to keep persisting. You got to keep showing up. And I think the game of basketball once was described to me by an old ball coach as a game of mistakes. And it is. I've had some really good teams, and we've had years where we've not had very many turnovers per game, but I've never played a perfect game. You're going to make mistakes, and that's a lot like life. There's so many analogies with sport and life. And I think we got to understand we're not going to be perfect, but we got to keep trying to fix it and come back the next time stronger and just do better. But yeah, I think your faith and just working hard and not being afraid of failure. I always tell my kids to write this down. Failure equals success. Failure, you show me someone that's successful, I'll show you someone that's failed over and over. And you can't be afraid of that. It's part of the formula. Can't accept it, but you can't be afraid of it, and you got to move on.
What's next for Michael Adams in retirement?
Being a Southern Indiana guy, I've always been a member of the HBCA, and I had the privilege to get a coach against Jack Butcher, the great Jack. But I just love Coach Butcher and learned so much from him. And the HBCA for us Southern Indiana guys was important. But I've also always been very involved with the IBCA, the Indiana Basketball Coaches Association. I can remember the first time I went to their clinic, Coach Keller sent me as an assistant coach. I just love coaches and clinics. So went to that, had a good experience. So I've really throughout my career have really been involved with the IBCA. As a district rep, I served as a top 20 board member for several years. And then I was humbled when they asked me to be president. So right now I'm serving as president of the IBCA. I'm in my I'm just finishing my first year as president. It's a 3-year term. So I'm really up into my elbows in the, so that's something that I'm really going to give a lot of attention to, try to serve and give back in that regard. But I don't know. I might, I hope I can get a little bit better at golf. I love to play golf. And I always say if I get to play more, I'll get a little better. So I want to play a little bit more golf. And I'm sure I'll find something to do. I'm not just going to watch Netflix all day. And I always get the question I get when we had our last clinic up in Indy. I had so many people come up and say, "Hey, I heard you're getting back in. I heard you're taking this job or that job." And I actually have been offered a couple coaching jobs. And my wife and I laugh. We say, we never say never, because I've seen too many guys get out of coaching and maybe get back in. And I don't say that to act like I'm going to get back in. I'm just saying that if the right situation would ever come up, you never know. Never say never. I know I've had a lot of guys want me to help as an assistant coach, but we'll see. That takes you can't do that unless you're going to be all in and totally committed. And that's a big commitment. So I don't know. We'll be open-minded and see where the good Lord takes us.
And it's even a bigger commitment now that you're in that grandparent phase, because there's even one more aspect
Yeah.
that you have to sacrifice in that regard. And I'm sure you recognize that as well.
Oh yeah. Teddy's really high on the priority list for sure.
And there's opportunity to develop a little basketball skill there, probably.
Yeah, Drew was pretty good. Drew could shoot it from anywhere. I'm sure that's what Donna wants me to do. She thinks I ought to start my own, because I love doing individual workouts, small group workouts. She thinks I ought to, I don't know, get a pole barn, a gym, and work kids out, which I would love to do that. But I don't know. We'll see. Just got to be open-minded and see what happens.
Well, Evansville would be a great place. Now, I was going to come back. So if you played golf with Bill Green, who was a scratch golfer, I just assumed you were already a scratch golfer.
No, it's a phenomenon how you can love something so much and really not be that good at it. I've had stages where I've been better than I am, but I just love to play. Coach Pat and I love to go out and beat it around, and it's just a fun thing to do.
It's ironic you said that, being that we're recording this again post Memorial Day holiday here in 2024. Over the holiday, I was invited and had a chance to play the Donald Ross Golf Course in French Lick, where in 1924 in the 1920s, they held the PGA tournament. I've loved that golf course, having grown up there. But my son invited me to go play with my nephew, his cousin, and my brother-in-law. I had the most consistent round, but didn't score worth a hoot, a 102, but still had the most consistent round. But just, it's a beautiful view. It's a challenging course. There's not an easy shot on the course, and that includes on the green, but just had a wonderful time.
Oh, it's just a great game. When you're an old guy like me that thought I was pretty good at baseball and basketball, it's something we can still compete and get those competitive juices flowing. And it's just a lot of fun. And the camaraderie and just being outside and seeing everything. I love it. Yeah.
Coach, I don't want to get away without two final questions. Someone watching that want to talk to you some more, just to gain some more of your insight and knowledge and experience, how can they find you?
For one, I'd tell them to really look at the IBCA website. So our information's on that, but they can call them. I'll give my phone number. And I get, when you know that whole thing, when you give someone something, you receive, you give a present, I feel that way. I love, when I was just at the clinic, a guy wanted our half court trap, our 1-2-2 half court trap. And I think I got more out of it than he did of me sharing what I knew. So I love doing that. So my number is 812-449-0236. And give me a call. And if I can't answer it, leave a message and I'll get back with you. And then there's, I think, the IBCA website. If you just go on that, and I'm doing a little politicking, I'd like for you to get on there anyway, just to look at it. But there's a way there you can get a hold of all the people that are on the board.
And Coach, finally, the wall decor behind you, the background, has been one of my favorite in the 2 years that we've had Leadership Synergized. And I know you and I spoke, and you don't want to take any credit or be misleading about how that all came about.
No, that's all Donna. It's all Donna. Yeah. But yeah, we're obviously here at home in our living room, and that's her decorations.
It's beautiful. And again, one of my favorite that I've seen. And Coach, from the bottom of my heart, my friend, I appreciate you. Thank you for all you have stood for. And wow, keep remaining engaged, not only in the game, but in life and in leadership. There's a great deal more opportunity that I'm sure our Father God has for you to continue to impact and represent his purpose. And I just appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for being here.
And I appreciate you. Right back at you. Ditto. Just appreciate what all you do. And yeah, just think you're a great human being, and we appreciate all that you do. Thank you, Kevin.
You're very kind. Thank you for watching. And I know you've taken a ton away to go absorb and reflect on, just as I have. Coach Adams and I just want to remind you, life doesn't have to come at us fast in every second or mode and everything that we do. Serve yourself, add value to yourself, increase the value you have for others. Love yourself and know that we're here. You're not in this alone, and we love you and we appreciate you from the bottom of our heart. Thank you for watching.